Okay, so hi friends, this is host Eric. Host Talking with Famous People with an exciting car video here for you as I'm returning from work. I've been wanting to make a video about responsibilities to community members, YouTube, State of the Union kind of speech in general. So I guess I'm going to attempt it on this video and we'll see if this is good enough to end up putting up or not. But the reason I want to make this video at all is because of recent events with both Brittney in particular, but also to a certain extent regarding Carissa, who's somebody who's reached out to me because she's in a challenging place with, I guess you'd say, mental health. Brittney is too, although you might be less quick to jump to it being a mental health issue because she's more or less within the range of sane-ish. She's not objectively delusionary. Like I can't say to Brittney that her stubbornness about her type is a delusion in the same way that I can say that thoughts about me sending secret messages in my videos based on secret information I've gotten about somebody is delusional. The latter is sort of clinically delusional. The former is just a lack of ability to process words, really. Brittney doesn't understand that something like introverted thinking. Yes, obviously she has thoughts. She forms her thoughts into words. And, she has knowledge, quote unquote, of things. She says she knows she's an HP. But what that just means is that she doesn't understand what the words mean and doesn't want them to mean what they mean. So extroverted thinking doesn't say people think more instead of feel. It's not just a change in the verb in the sentence, I think this versus I feel this. It's a process by which, if you're engaged in introverted thinking, you are engaged in reducing experiences to universally critiquable ideas or constructs. So if you are saying you don't know me in response to something, or only I know myself best, or stop trying to put people in boxes, or whatever, those are not appealing to critiquable notions. They're saying, let's not reduce individuals to labels like EHP or such. Those arguments can't be used in support of choosing the label arbitrarily. They're in opposition to labels at all. So if the reality is we can't know you and we can't label you because you're an individual, well then your individuated label of EHP is of no functional worth. In other words, you might choose those 4 letters, but everybody else should treat them as though they were arbitrarily chosen. You're just WXYZ. Because you're not using the words as people normally mean the words. So, from an objective standpoint, Brittney is, as far as I'm concerned, the textbook example of ESFP. She's as textbook as you get. So much so that she can't even distinguish between thinking and feeling meaningfully. She's never experienced a non-outcome driven logic. That's how all of her logic that she experiences is. It's the logic of how. It's never the logic of why. That her tool function is anathema to the logic of why. It defines her blind spot of the logic of why. So much so that she can't even realize that she's not engaged in any logic of why. She's only engaged in logics of how and the logics of what I want. I'm not saying those things aren't important, I'm saying that they're different from that which is distinct from them. Oh my goodness. You're sexy as fuck. That woman is sexy. God, she's got to be like about a 35-year-old Chinese woman, but she's stacked. And looks just like kind of bovine expression on her face. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the question is, well, what's my responsibility as a YouTuber, as a human being, to community members who are necessarily going to encounter a lot of harsh words because of limits implicit to their nature and self-imposed limits. So the thing is, there's always the culpability issue. Brittney is probably BPD, is my guess, which means she experienced some abuse. And being a feeler, an introverted feeler, in the 1 or 2 slot, you experience abuse, you're going to come out damaged differently than other types would. The most damageable of all types being the INFP, and the second most damageable of all types being probably the ENFP, but with ISFP and ESFP not far behind. The BPD of an INFP at least acknowledges the legitimacy of evaluating introverted thinking on its own metric. It just says we ought never prefer that metric. What we see with Brittney is somebody who's incapable of making the distinction at all. Like, so she can't agree that within a TI framework that this would be TI right, and then say, but we shouldn't use the TI framework. That requires her to be able to distinguish what one is and understand that she's saying, I don't like this thing. Instead, what we get is her simply thinking there's no distinction to be made because she's never used introverted thinking before to solve any problems and can't imagine how anyone meaningfully could. Just as I might mistake introverted feeling for introverted thinking. I might say, be in the heat of an emotional moment and fail to recognize that my own emotional heat is preventing me from being objective about a given calculation. It's understanding later I go, oh, I guess I was emotional. Of course, later on I do go that because I'm using TI to critique everything. Once I get away from the emotion and it's no longer directing my action, I'm able to critique the situation in retrospect and go, okay, the problem there was I was actually being driven by my feelings, not by logical consistency, and that's why I made such a poor decision. For me, that's when I make a poor decision. Brittney presumably makes a poor decision when she's using introverted thinking. However, in this instance, we see how introverted thinking and introverted feeling are very different functions. If you're making the mistake as I make it, where I'm actually being driven by my feelings, but I'm so enamored of my feelings at the moment that I'm not being fair and logical about something. I'm not critiquing myself in an unbiased fashion. Well, that default tool function results in more, not less, correctness. On the other hand, if upon reflection I'm looking to my feelings and going, yep, that's how I feel about it, that just reinforces the wrongness. There's no disputing the fact that regardless of which value or modality of decision making you prefer, whichever one you're habituated to, I guess I should say, that you're going to view the other one as less legitimate. The difference is that for the TI user, you're going to be able to apply that same criticism equally to yourself as to others, whereas the FI user is simply not going to be able to. And that makes it it's the worst function to use when deciding things that involve other people. So if you're deciding that you're an ENTP because you just want to play ENTP by yourself, that's one thing. If you're deciding you're an ENTP to tell everybody else that you're an ENTP and to convince everybody else that you're an EHP, and to provide ideation about what it's like to be an EHP and all that stuff, well, then you're no longer hanging out in FI ground. You're saying, not only is my experience valid for me, it should be valid for you as well. And once you do that, then you're subject to critique, understandably. Being subject to critique means using words that other people can use to prove you wrong, unavoidably. If I say I'm an EHP because I like apples, then I open myself up to the critique that if that were the case, then everybody who liked apples would be an EHP. And we know that's not the case, so your reasoning is flawed. That's called introverted thinking. It's deciding things based on what passes a reciprocal burdens equivalency test best. What passes a legitimizing test that critiques on the grounds of analogical equivalency. That in analogous situations, we all agree it's meow to meow, then we should in this situation. And similarly, because we all agree with the conclusion meow under meow, meow, meow circumstances, then under meow, 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 we should agree with the conclusion as well. Something like that. The process of NE and TI and FE and NI is one of reducing the rich and actual experience of the individual from the unique and incommunicable reality that it is into something that is no longer unique and is communicable. It is saying, let's care not about the thing itself, but the symbol of the thing. And if we care about the symbol of the thing, then we care a lot about people speaking fairly. The idea of the symbolic over the actual was brought home to me this morning as I got in the car driving to work. It was 79 degrees, it said on the thermometer. But what happened first was I felt like it was a little hot in the car. I was like, it's a little hot. Maybe I should turn the air conditioner on. Then I checked the thermometer number, 79 degrees. And I said, I guess it's not that hot. Well, of course, what am I doing there? What am I displaying? Why do I need to know what number that thing says? Isn't the determining factor how I actually feel? If I feel hot, isn't that a good enough reason to turn on the air conditioning? Doesn't matter if it says 79, 78, 82, or what. Isn't that how I should determine it? Well, yeah, it is. So why then do I check the number and then choose not to turn on the air conditioning because the number wasn't over 80? Well, because I'm an NETI user, which means my dominant nature is to come up with possible ideas in symbols, to deal with the generation of symbolics. And my second function is to deal with the legitimacy of symbolics. And my third function is to deal with the efficacy of symbolics, which means the efficacy of persuading and influencing others. So, naturally, when I have an experience that's absolutely not any of those things, such as feeling too hot, I don't use my knowledge function directly, like my body feels too warm, therefore I will take action. I use it kind of indirectly. I go, well, what's been my symbolic understanding of this event occurring to me in the past? Usually if it's over 80, it starts to get to where maybe I'll turn on a little air conditioning. If it's not over 80, it's not that hot, and I'll just roll down the window. That's sort of a heuristic that I have in my SI. So if that pops up, I look at the temperature gauge, I see what temperature it is, and I don't turn on the air conditioner. Why? Because I'm just fundamentally more comfortable dealing with things in the symbolic approximations of them than the actual experience of them. And I'm most comfortable determining the legitimacy of things by that symbolic representation approach. So what do I do when I think about turning on the air conditioning? I determine the legitimacy of it through symbols and my knowledge function of how I've dealt with them in the past. Is this a resolved issue I have to do brand new thinking about it? The answer to that was no, I don't need to do brand new thinking about it. I know when and under what circumstances I'll turn the air conditioning on and when I don't. I just need to access one symbol to check the status of that symbol. It's a silly way to decide to turn on the air conditioner or not, because deciding to turn on the air conditioner or not is a decision that's best served through alternate modalities of attention and habits of attention than the ones I'm utilizing. In other words, Kimberly would just turn it on if she felt hot. She would find how she feels and her self-knowledge foremost in every circumstance, so it's very easy for her to respond appropriately to that. Since I'm seeking somebody else to do that for me, like Kim often does, it's really hot in here, you should have a glass of cold water or something, or here, turn on a fan, geez, you must be cooking. I'm seeking somebody else to do that for me because I'm not attending to that. After all, that's something that's going to be cued most appropriately by actual physical data, not by symbolic data. It might say 79 but be very humid and I feel very hot. It might say 79 and it'd be very dry and I feel fine. Or, it might be 79 and you feel it's hot. It might be 79 and I feel it's fine. Those things are not very well suited to symbolic representations. And the reason is because the symbol is always removed from the thing that actually matters. In that instance, what actually matters is the experience of your feeling hot or cold. What actually matters is not the corollary data points that normally associate with you feeling too hot or too cold, which is what I try to make it, right? So, Brittney, going back to you, you have an ability to do something that I do not have, and I will never be able to know, I'll never be able to get, and that's, you know what's truly important to you. It's truly important to you for some reason to self-identify as possessing the attributes of the ENTP, to self-identify as intellectually rigorous, to self-identify as smart and creative, to self-identify as logical. That's very important to you. You know you want that. You know you want that so badly. You know so clearly that you want that you can't conceive of not being that. But I've got some good news for you. You can self-identify as all of the traits you want to self-identify as: intellectual, creative, inspiring, or whatever else you want to identify as, without calling yourself an ENTP. If you do call yourself an ENTP, and you believe that the only way you can be those things is by being an ENTP, then you're going to undermine your own ability to believe it. If you're trying to convince yourself you're okay, you're okay. You're okay as you are. Nobody's okay trying to force themselves into being something they're not. If you're a homosexual and you try to force yourself to be, to get on chicks, then you're never going to be happy until you admit you're gay and start sucking dick. And vice versa. If you are somehow, it's like we were raised in some weird San Francisco community where gay is the normal thing and heterosexual is frowned upon, you can suck as much dick as you want. You're never going to be happy until you give up and admit you want some tang. And that's fine. So, Brittney, is the same thing. You need to understand that you're not using introverted thinking, that it's something real and specific. It's not just what you know or what you feel or what you think. It's a disinterested calculus whereby you go, oh great, someone's critiquing my self-identification as the ENTP. Let me first figure out how they are right, and then make a decision about whether I'm right. I'm going to figure out exactly the different ways you could respond to everything that's being said, the different ways they could bolster their arguments, so I can figure out which arguments here are strongest. That's introverted thinking. You're not concerned about the arguments at all, remotely. When somebody makes a good argument as to why it is you're not an ENTP, you don't respond by critiquing the argument directly on point with actual warrants. You just write some gobbledygook that doesn't make any sense. It's not responsive. It's not on point. It's not disinterested in its calculus. Knowledge is not introverted thinking. Thinking is not introverted thinking. Feeling is not introverted thinking. Introverted thinking is a criterion for legitimacy. And every step of this process, you have demonstrated the opposite criterion for legitimacy. You are not legitimizing the way that an introverted thinker would, by being self-critical, objectively self-critical first and foremost. It's the key. The reason why some ENTPs sometimes develop some of the traits that they're overblowingly credited with in internet descriptions is because of that objective self-criticism. It is an advantage. It's something you don't have, Brittney. It may be unfair that you are incapable of it, but you are more or less incapable of it. Now, what I'm telling you is, if you can't do it yourself, I will help you with it. I will give you the criticism you need to help you understand that you're never going to find yourself in any sense of the word, be yourself in any sense of the word, manifest your true identity, or optimize in any sense of the word, until you accept the truth about yourself. You are not a logical person. You are not intellectually rigorous. You are intellectually sloppy. That's okay. It doesn't make you inferior. It means you are an introverted feeler, not an introverted thinker. So next time somebody says something like that, I've given you a lot of explanation here. If you are an ENTP, you'll respond to this by foremost going down and saying, here are all the points where you're right, Eric, and here's why you're right. Here's my answer to those points on point that's responsive, and here's some additional points that I think are critical in this calculation that you're not considering. Give me reasons why I should believe you're an ENTP, and expect those reasons to be held to a standard of consistency with data, with what you've said before, with what I've said, with what people agree on, and other mechanical things like, well, it can't be possible, Brittney, that this quality you're using to justify this self-identification also produces this contrary self-identification concurrently, because you can't work in opposite directions at the same time. So what is your claim or warrant? You can expect that to occur, right? If you don't understand what I'm saying, if you can't actually resolve things with real argumentation that's on point and responsive, then you're not an ENTP. And I can tell you with 100% certainty you are not. Now, I don't care, but that brings me back to the main topic of the video, which is responsibility to community members. Brittney may have gotten herself largely ostracized from TwFP with her bad behavior regarding the anything and then her subsequent attempting to defend that behavior, when, again, such a circumstance requires an objective party, somebody who's introverted thinking, to acknowledge their own wrongdoing first and foremost, and to seek to be absolved of that in some capacity by virtue of their honesty. I don't think Brittney is a willful liar. Like, I don't think she's willfully and knowingly telling lies for self-interest purposes. Obviously, she's not working in her own self-interest in any sense of the word. If she wants to be perceived as an ENTP, she's doing a terrible job of going about that. So it's hard to say that she's intentionally lying. It's, like I said, and I think all ESFPs have the same kind of disability that ENTPs and ESTPs have. We only judge really in one way, and that's logically. So it's offensive to me, the unwillingness of Brittney to concede the logical and reasonable and fair and correct objections to her self-identification. Concurrently, I'm sure it's very frustrating for Brittney to see me to try to disabuse her of her wrongness when she's absolutely convinced that it's not an objective matter, that she gets to decide what type she is, and it doesn't matter what other people say, because we don't know her experience. Of course, there's a name for that. It's called ESFP. So the problem again is, Brittney, you're double binding yourself by insisting others take at face value a presumption upon which you're legitimizing the value of what you're saying. If I were named male ENTP, making a channel about what it's like to be a male ENTP, then that's fine if nobody ever sees it. If somebody sees it, however, and they're listening to me and saying, well, I want to learn about ENTP, maybe I'm one. If I'm actually an ESFP, then I'm going to do nothing but mislead people and or evoke from them a response that sounds like, you're not an ENTP. And the reason they're going to respond like that is because it's descriptive of a certain thing. Just because you call something a frog doesn't mean other people are going to agree it's a frog. No matter how much you experience it as a frog, if it's actually a cactus, everyone's going to object to your insistence that it's a frog, and it doesn't matter how much your experience validates the fact that it's a frog to you. You got to understand and accept that it doesn't validate it for others, that it's not a legitimate naming. It may be a legitimate experience for you to call something a frog, but it's not a legitimate naming, because the naming aspect of it requires it be communicatively functional. The things you're saying, you're not using words in ways that other people use them. You're not naming yourself or labeling yourself in a way that's communicatively functional. Nobody else understands those letters to mean a person who displays like Brittney does. Everybody else understands those letters to mean that Brittney is an ESFP, obviously, because she's super extroverted. She's obviously polar TI, has no capacity for logical judgment, no functional capacity, and doesn't even, so much so she can't even draw the distinction. So, as a consequence, Brittney, this for you is really an issue of stubbornness and ego. I know I'm not good with feelings, and so I have to defer to others. When they tell me I don't understand something, I may feel bad about that. What do you mean I don't understand what you're talking about without feelings? About how strongly you're attached to this or some other shit. But I don't go, yes, I know how to use those just as well as you do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Because I know I don't. Of course, that's because I use TI. Now, you're not... Do you believe yourself incapable of knowing how you feel? Do you believe you don't know how much you value someone or something? That you don't know whether you're enjoying time spent doing something or not? That you don't know what's important to you? Are you trying to tell me that? Because I've never heard anything from you that indicates that's the case. So, I, for one, appreciate the fact that you watch my videos, comment on them, leave your little lightning bolts or whatever. I like that. I appreciate the fact that you're an active consumer of my media. Thank you for that. I'm not trying to dissuade you from doing that. I'm trying to help you interact with other human beings within the shared reality, rather than demanding other people enter into your subjectively valid but not shared reality. So, and I want to make sure, like what I said in the video the other night, I don't want to reduce you to an object of ridicule. It would help if you'd stop being so absolutely ridiculous about this. You're not an ENTP. And I don't care. I want to stress this also. I don't care if you are or not or what. I'm just saying what I care about is living in a world where words mean things. And we don't use them arbitrarily to attempt to force an identity, a self-identity of our own pleasure to become objectively the belief set of another party. That's just not going to fly, you know? You don't get to dictate to other people what they believe you are. And if you insist you're an ENTP all the time, you're going to hear from everybody who knows anything about cognitive functions, you're going to hear the following words: No, you're not, obviously. So I offer this video in hopes that I get through to you a bit on this. I've noted all the various comments and new video uploads on your part. You're still fighting this battle. I respect the willingness to throw down, but you're not throwing down like an ENTP at all, and you never will, because once again, you aren't one. You don't have any introverted thinking. You have perhaps less grasp of introverted thinking than anyone I've ever met. So you're definitely not an introverted thinker, which means you're not an ENTP. All right.